This is the News Guardian Report. Just a quick reminder before we jump into this, don't forget to like and subscribe to the videos and click the bell icon so you can stay up to date with the News Guardian Report. I'm here with Steve Combs. We were talking about the tax cuts that are going into effect this year, and we just wanted to talk a little bit more about that. So,
Sure, thank you. The Associated Press reported a poll that was done a month or so ago that said a majority of Americans believe that the tax cuts, most of those benefits go to rich individuals and corporations.
now that's interesting.
It is interesting. Let's look at some numbers here. Individual tax receipts for 2017 were expected to be about $1.66 trillion. That's about 48% of all federal tax revenue. Corporations were expected to pay about $324 billion, or about 9% of the total. So when people start talking about these huge tax cuts that are going to these big corporations, you're really talking about a small number relative to the whole.
Right.
The rest of taxes, you say, well, that's 9 and 48. Where are the rest of it? Well, the rest of it are Medicare, unemployment, taxes, that sort of stuff, unemployment insurance, customs, estate taxes, that sort of thing. Well, the Pew Research Center did a survey of 2015 taxes, and that's the latest year we have figures for.
Right.
Found that taxpayers making more than $200,000 a year paid about 58% of all the individual federal income taxes. But that represented only about 4.5% of the returns filed. Taxpayers making less than $30,000 filed nearly 44% of all tax returns, but paid just 1.4% of all federal income taxes.
Interesting.
So the taxpayer making less than $30,000 a year paid an effective rate of about 4.9%. I don't want to bury people in numbers, but people making between $50,000 and $100,000 paid about a little over 9%. And then people at the very high end making $2 million or more paid an effective tax rate of about 27.5%. So that shows you the progressive nature of our tax system, and it's by design. We as a society decided a long time ago that the rich people should pay a higher percentage of their income in taxes than the middle class and the poor. And that's been well accepted, I think, even by most conservatives.
Of course, of course.
In 2013, 3.6 million corporate taxes were refiled, and that's the latest year we have numbers for. And they paid an effective rate of about 15.2%. Now, this is after all their deductions, tax credits, and all this sort of thing. Well, opponents of the tax cuts have said, why cut the corporate tax rate? It was 35% until this year, and now it's, I think, 20 or 22, something like that. But effectively, they were only paying 15. So that was the argument. Well, why cut their taxes because they're only paying 15? Well, it's an analogous to individuals who, I may be in a 20% tax bracket, but after my deductions, standard deduction, personal exemptions, all this other kind of stuff,
much lower than
I'm
that.
paying an effective rate of much
lower.
Much lower than
Yes.
that. All right? So, but here's the argument. This is the thing we need to explain. This is what people need to understand. Corporations don't pay taxes.
Exactly.
They pass all costs on to the end user.
Consumers, the employees.
Whoever writes the final check, that's who's paying the tax. Because to a corporation, the income tax is like the light bill. It's an operating expense. And corporations are not just going to absorb that. Stockholders are not going to say, well, we'll just pay the tax. Well, it doesn't. The world doesn't work that way. Okay. All right. So the argument that corporations are getting rich and they don't pay enough taxes is really kind of an act of class warfare when you get right down to it.
Oh, agreed.
because in the end it's the individuals who pays the tax. So when a corporation sells you a box of macaroni and cheese, for example, part of that price you're paying for that dollar box of macaroni and cheese is that corporate income tax. And this is what so many people don't understand, because they've been told in school and in their flawed economics classes that corporations pay these taxes when they really don't. But let's look at the effect, and we're going to have better numbers on this as the year goes on. We have an unemployment rate of, 3.9% now?
Record low.
Record low unemployment of blacks and Latinos and women and everybody else, because these tax cuts have just supercharged this economy. And it will probably continue. I'm going to guess.
I hope so.
Yeah, I guess so. So now you see these corporations like Walmart that gave out these bonuses, and these companies, Target and some other, I believe, have raised their minimum wage. And so they are able to do this because one of their costs has gone down, just as if the rent had gone down. It really is no difference. And so, well, they go in different places on the tax return. I don't want to mischaracterize that. There's pre-tax profit and then there's after-tax profit, but it's still a cost. And this is what we need people to understand, because when you are told that the rich people and that corporations are benefiting from this more than the middle class, you have to look, well, wait a minute. Then what explains all of this substantial drop in unemployment, the return of manufacturing jobs to this country, the growth in the economy? That's not due to only rich people benefiting, because the rest of us who are out there making wages and things have benefited tremendously.
Oh, absolutely.
From this.
Absolutely.
I've got a lot more numbers, but I think it would just kind of overwhelm people if we went through them. That's sort of the...
And we could if people wanted to have a more detailed breakdown. We could absolutely do that.
Yeah.
And we invite all of you to drop us a comment, and
I hope so. I just
get involved in the conversation.
I think we can... Let me leave everybody with this.
Sure.
And this goes back to, I don't know if it was the same research that Pew did or not, but in last year, this was a different survey. Last year, Pew did a research, and Pew is not a conservative polling organization. It leans a little bit, I would say, to just a little bit left of center in its biases. It found that 52% of U.S. adults would like to have the corporate
tax rate increased.
Not cut from 35 to 22 or whatever it is, but raised. At 52% of adults. Wow. And that was 69% of Democrats and some lower number for Republicans.
And this is just due to a lack of misunderstanding?
Sure it is. It's what they hear on cable news.
And they regurgitate that back to the...
And so they believe it. And it really is class warfare, because people who are struggling to pay the rent and provide for their families hear about all this money that these people are making, and they really don't understand that if there were no rich people, there would be no jobs. And so, I mean, I don't know too many poor people who have created a lot of jobs.
Well, that is true.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, well, thanks for that, Steve. Thanks for watching, everyone. Catch us next time on podcast number 7.
And this is Steve Combs reporting for the News Guardian.